mynews.studio.
Solar panels now outnumber cows in some regions. The pace is surprising. Are we really seeing clean energy reshape the world this quickly?
Today is July 7th, 2025. Let's jump right in. Since 2019, clean energy rollouts have really picked up speed. Just last year, renewables made up over 90% of new global power capacity. That's 585 gigawatts added, which is a big leap. But is this just impressive on paper, or is it actually cutting emissions in a way people can feel?
It's not just a numbers game. That growth is preventing around 2.6 billion tons of CO₂ emissions each year. That's about 7% of all global emissions. So it's a real, measurable reduction, not just a projection.
That's a concrete result. And there's serious money behind it. Global energy spending is set at $3.3 trillion for next year, and $2.2 trillion is going into clean tech. That's twice as much as fossil fuels get. Why do you think so much of this investment is flowing to renewables now and not coal or oil?
It's being driven by a few things. Climate targets are a big part, but so are economic recovery plans, industrial policy, and a need for stable energy supplies.
Energy security? You mean countries are trying to avoid the ups and downs of fossil fuel markets?
Exactly. With recent geopolitical changes, countries are keen to protect themselves from price swings and supply disruptions.
But the transition isn't the same everywhere. China and Asia seem to be leading. How does it look for other regions?
That's right. Asia, China in particular, added nearly 64% of last year's new renewable capacity. The G7 and G20 as a group covered more than 90%, but regions like Central America and the Caribbean only accounted for about 3%. So there's a clear divide.
Why such a big gap? Is it mostly about policy, or is financing the main stumbling block?
It's both. China benefits from strong industrial policies and huge manufacturing scale. Other regions face tougher financing plus infrastructure issues. And when you look at the types of renewables, solar is leading. Over 3/4 of new capacity last year was solar, up 32%. Wind is growing too, but not as fast.
And outside of electricity, like in transportation and industry, are we seeing big shifts? Electric vehicles, for example?
Electric vehicle adoption is climbing quickly. That's cutting oil demand for road transport, which really matters for emissions. Industry is making changes too. More renewables, better efficiency. But progress depends on the sector and country. For buildings, heat pumps and electric systems are cutting emissions, especially where the grid is already clean.
So, things are changing, but we're not quite on track for 2030 yet. What's the main thing holding us back?
To reach the 2030 goal, tripling renewable capacity, we need annual growth of 16.6%, which is up from 15.1% now. That calls for faster deployment, fixing grid issues, and
the financing gap, especially in developing countries, right?
Exactly. Plus, rising demand from electric vehicles and data centers is adding even more pressure on the system.
Would you say renewables are now the default choice for new power projects, not just something extra?
Yes, renewables are now the main force in new power generation. They're cost-competitive, scalable, and central to national strategies. The UN even referred to this as the powering down of the fossil fuel age. And it's not only about climate. There are big economic and health benefits too.
How crucial are international agreements and climate finance, especially for supporting developing countries?
They're essential. Agreements like the Paris Accord create targets and frameworks for working together. Climate finance is opening up large-scale projects, particularly in the Global South. In 2024, $2 trillion went into clean energy worldwide, much of it with the backing of multilateral banks. But higher borrowing costs and risks still hold things back in some regions.
And on jobs, are we seeing real economic growth in places that lead on renewables? And is there a risk of others missing out?
Clean energy is generating millions of jobs across manufacturing, installation, and maintenance. Countries like China, the US, and those in Europe are seeing local economies grow and energy prices drop as solar and wind get cheaper. But slower adopters could miss out on these benefits and may even face higher, less stable energy costs.
So there's a lot at stake, not just for climate, but for jobs, growth, and energy bills. Are we moving fast enough? Or is there a risk that inequality could get worse?
The progress is tangible, but experts warn we need to accelerate and make sure the benefits are shared more fairly. That means more cooperation, targeted support for developing regions, and policies to ensure the transition is just. There's hope, but also a sense of urgency. The 2030 targets are approaching quickly.
That's the big picture. Clean energy is transforming economies, creating jobs, and cutting emissions worldwide. The real test is making sure these gains reach more than just a few countries.
And it's a working example for the future, showing what's possible when action is collective and persistent.
That's it for today. We started with solar panels outnumbering cows, and now we can see the broader story: quick changes, real impacts, and a race against the clock.
Thanks for tuning in. Clean energy isn't just a headline, it's reshaping daily life everywhere.
Thank you for listening. This episode was brought to you by mynews.studio. Try it now for free.